Hi, welcome to Human Resources Management. I'm Tom Stevenson. This is lecture 9B, and we're going to be discussing leadership in this lecture. I think it would be a little bit, we'd be missing something if we didn't talk about leadership when we're talking about a human resources management course, because that's how you get people to follow or to enable them to do things. There's a requirement for leadership. And I think that a lot of people misunderstand some of the attributes and skills of great managers and great leaders, and what some of the nuanced differences are between the attributes and skills of great managers and great leaders. So let's talk a little bit about what makes a great manager. What are some of the elements that makes a great manager? And maybe you want to pause for a minute or two and just write down what are some of the things that you think the skills are of a great manager. And trying to keep in mind, we're talking about great manager, and we're going to talk about the same thing for great leaders. And if you want, make a list side by side, great managers, great leaders. While some of them have some crossover effect, you'll find that there are some very distinct qualities between a great manager and a great leader. And of course, a great manager that adopts a lot of great leadership quality will further their career, will be able to go farther, will be more successful with the people. Life will be a little bit easier to run things. And that will be very, very helpful in that way. So when we take a look at some of the skills and attributes of great managers, we have excellent problem solving skills, the ability to solve problems. You're going to run into stuff on a day-to-day basis, so you want to be pretty agile at that. And to do that, you have to be pretty creative and have a good imagination. That's very helpful quality. You'll find that great managers are pretty analytical. They're able to determine what data is valuable, what data is not valuable, maybe some weaknesses in the data, some strengths in the data, and being able to interpret it and apply those results in a successful manner. They have excellent communication skills. They don't have to be, a Barack Obama type speaker. They just have to have a way or a method of being able to get their message across. And generally speaking, the best of managers are somebody we talked about consistency. See how that keeps coming up over and over again in the various talks that we have? But if you're going to be managing people, people don't know how to deal with somebody that's very inconsistent with them. And typically it's not the best end result when you don't know how that person's going to behave, in what circumstances. So an even temperament, pleasant personality can be very helpful in the aspect of being a great manager. The leadership by example aspect, if you're productive, you're setting the tone and others will see that, and it helps to create the culture of what goes on in your business. So excellent leadership by example. You're productive in what you're doing, and you're observant. You see things that are going on, and you can gravitate to that. Good administrative ability. Well, management is all about administering and documenting and tracking and having good documentation so that you can implement processes and systems, and you can be successful at repeating that process. So good administrative ability tends to be a strong point for great managers. Good judgment. So you have to be able to make decisions and be able to determine what's a good decision. So you have to be able to look at the data, make a judgment call, and most times be correct on those judgment calls. We talked about failure. It's okay to fail as long as you recognize that and you learn from that. And a great manager and a great leader would be successful at both of those qualities. Focused and client-oriented. Great managers, they're really good at honing in, laser focus of what needs to be done and doing it and getting others to do it and following up on their quality levels and making sure it's meeting the standards as required. And client-oriented. So company person, somebody who has the best interests of the company at heart, that will tend to be a quality of a great manager. So I also have this point, knowledgeable with, and probably the broad technical understanding might be cut off with my picture on the screen I'm noticing right now, but knowledgeable with broad technical understanding. You don't have to know everything. Nobody knows everything. But the more you know, the better. And if you know it to a sufficient amount of detail, that'll help you to make good judgment decisions based on good knowledge, good feedback, engagement of your people, then that will be extremely helpful as a quality of a great manager. So I'm wondering, did you get a chance to write down some of the attributes of a great leader? If you didn't, maybe pause this and write down some of the attributes that you think are of a great leader, and then unpause it, and then I'll move on to the next slide. So I'll give you a moment to pause it and think about the attributes of a great leader, most of which will be different than this. All right, some of them have a little bit of crossover. Okay, I'll give you a sec. Now that we're back, let's look at the attributes and skills of a great leader. So attributes and skills of a great leader: high personal and professional ethics. Well, people are looking to you, and if you're doing things that are unethical and of not the best standards, then that tends to have spin-off effects. That tends to roll through the company. It has a lot of negative impacts. We don't have to look too far for this kind of thing. If you look in politics and that sort of thing, it tends to, if you've got a leader who is not operating on high ethical standards, it tends to ruminate down through the ranks, and you can see problems, systemic problems all through the political party or whatever that may be in that situation. But same thing happens in businesses. Passionate. It's hard to get excited about something. Let's say we have a project manager leading a big construction project. We're going to get this done in a year and a half. We're going to meet the budget requirements. We're going to meet the quality expectation. Not very inspiring. Somebody that's passionate about it is going to be trying to instill that passion in others. They'll be looking beyond just the budget, the time orientation. We need to get this done because this hospital is going to help the community and they need it like yesterday. And so we're going to do this really well, but we're not going to compromise on quality. And this is how we're going to do it. Somebody that's got a vision and somebody that can really encapsulate and grab people. That's the attributes of a great leader. It can't be somebody that's going through the motions. Somebody going through the motions is not going to be a great leader. And a great leader is going to be forward-looking. We've talked about vision. They're housed more in the vision area. They see things that other people don't see, and they help other people to see it. So they create a story around it that helps to grab and entice people around that story. So they're high energy. They're not complacent. They definitely have excellent communication skills, and they really know how to connect with people, to really sort of engage with people. And they have the courage to say things and do things that others don't want to say and do. It may not be what others want to hear, and a great leader doesn't care. They're going to say it because they really believe it. So they have the courage to do those things. Committed and dedicated. So it's very similar to the passionate, high energy. You need somebody that's committed, dedicated, and that's in for the long haul. Knows that it's probably not going to be an easy road and is going to stick with it right to the end. So committed and dedicated, that's a great leader. Inquisitive, asking a lot of questions. Asking questions is very important. It's a very important skill set. Good thing to look up is the 5 whys. Why you keep asking deeper and deeper and deeper levels of why to somebody, and they get more specific, and you can get at the root cause of something. So the 5 whys, but they're inquisitive. And I think I probably mentioned in an earlier lecture about Richard Branson and his trip from LaGuardia Airport, and how when he got out of the car, a reporter, while he got out of the car, a reporter asked the taxi driver, what was up, and he said, well, when he got in the car, he asked questions from beginning to end, and he kept putting it in his journal, and so he had all the answers to all these questions in his journal, so that he had a good idea from the grassroots what was going on. So that aspect of being inquisitive, that is definitely the skills of a great leader. Great leaders don't know everything, but they learn a lot through asking questions and really getting good perspectives on that. So it's really helpful for them when they do that. So they are inquisitive, and as I mentioned, forward-looking with vision. They have no problem with the vision statement. They see it, they live it, they breathe it. Innovative, creative, because there's going to be a lot of roadblocks. There's going to be a lot of people saying you can't do something. And they're very innovative and creative, and they know how to tap people that are even more innovative and creative to draw out answers to problems and other ways of doing things, and doing things that others say couldn't be done. That's somebody that's innovative, creative. That's a great leader. Goal and objective oriented, really driven by goals, really understands the magnitude, but also the muscle and the motivation behind having goals. The same thing, the calm, even keel aspect. If there's a crisis going on, they're able to keep steady. Everybody else is running for the doors, and they're able to keep steady, keep things under control, not inducing panic, getting the best out of people in the worst of circumstances. That's the skills of a great leader. Another one is the desire to help others succeed. It's not all about you, making sure that you are helping others to succeed. If you leave this business, you have somebody else in place that's going to take over, that's going to do at least as well as you or better, or at least that's what you believe, because you've helped to make sure that they've had the proper training to take over when you leave. That's a great leader. A lot of leaders, they don't care. When they leave, if the place sinks, they're happy enough because everybody will say, oh, it was great till they left. The genius leader with 1,000 soldiers below them just responding to their dictates is not the sign of a great leader, not a built-to-last leader. So those are some of the points that come up when I think about it. And when I think about the attributes of a great leader, maybe you want to take a minute now again. This lecture is a great opportunity to pause a little bit to think about it. So maybe you want to pause for a bit and think about somebody that resonates with you as a great leader. It could be some political person that you've had culturally, because everybody, in this course is usually from places from all around the world. Some great leaders that may come to mind. And the other thing I want to mention is that I feel like no matter who you pick as a great leader, there's always some flaws somewhere. People are human. So nobody is going to come across perfectly. And probably the more influence they had or power they had, there was probably certain times they did something that wasn't necessarily the best choice at that time. But that's fine. Just so you know, you're not going to find the perfect leader. At least I've never seen them. But there are ones that there's qualities that you can appreciate and that you can look to at the best of qualities. Some of the qualities you think weren't so good, you can say, well, that wouldn't be me because I wouldn't do X, Y, Z. And you can learn from those things too. So it's a good way to look and view things from that perspective. But maybe take a pause and think of what are the skills of a great leader. Ones that come to mind that I see usually come up in the past. Mahatma Gandhi comes up quite frequently. Nelson Mandela comes up quite frequently. Martin Luther King comes up quite frequently. Abraham Lincoln is an excellent one that I really kind of aspire to in the sense that he failed so many times. To get elected to president, if you look at his history, how many elections he lost, how many failures he had, amazing amount of failures, but he's one of these individuals, learned from his failures. every time, learned from his failures, got better, got more knowledgeable, got more skill sets. And by the time the 1860s were rolling around, he was the right person at the right place at the right time to do what needed to be done for the United States. So I think of that, and we already discussed that in a previous lecture where you know, he feels that if he can make his enemies his friends, that's going to make him much more successful. He learned about that skill in building relationships. We talked about Benjamin Franklin with the book sharing aspect in the previous lecture. Great example. Another one that I appreciate for sure is Winston Churchill. And some people, there's certain things about Winston Churchill that some people do not like, and for sure, and I acknowledge that. But the things that I appreciate about Churchill was he failed a lot, just like Abraham Lincoln. Probably failed even more largely and grandiosely than Abraham Lincoln, at least more publicly. There was a speech that he had to give in, I think it was around 1908, around that time period, and he was fairly new to Parliament at the time, and he went up to give the speech. And it was very interesting because he didn't really prepare that much. He didn't really have very good notes, and he got flabbergasted in the middle of the speech, forgot what he was supposed to say, got really nervous, and stood there sort of with his mouth hanging open and just went and sat down about halfway through without finishing. And the newspapers apparently later said, this young Winston Churchill, he's mentally inept and not suitable for Parliament, and all these things in the newspaper. So here you got a guy that was like considered mentally inept, not good at giving speeches in the beginning. And then by the time World War II rolled around, his speeches are considered to be among the best speeches of the 20th century. There were 6 speeches he gave in, I think it's May of 1939, and really rallied, and we talked about motivation in this course, helped to motivate the people of the UK to defend the UK against Germany, right when Germany had the upper hand balance of power. So great leadership requirements, but learning from that, and he would prepare after that. He would run his practice speeches off different people as he's developing it to see their reactions. Many of his staff and that had heard parts of his speech long before he would give the speech, because he would always be trying to phrase things differently, to make the speech simple, to make it roll easily. And he became adept at it, really, really good, but not without practice. He knew what it would take. And so that's somebody that's learned from failure and has turned that weakness into a strong strength and been able to apply it in a very successful way, and to build on a story and draw people in and be able to have a vision and lead them through it, while at the same time telling them how tough it's going to be. So for me, that was very good. But like I said, he made a lot of mistakes. Considered an imperialist, didn't respond properly in Bengal. A lot of the information that you'll read, the Gallipoli, major military disaster, but learned from it. Also learned a lot about people and understood people and knew what was going on in Germany long before the rest of the UK really understood what was going on in Germany, or at least the politicians as well. So those are the skills and attributes of a great leader, somebody that can learn from their mistakes and get better as time goes on. So you're always looking for those types of individuals. But as I said, nobody is perfect. Everybody has their flaws, and it's good to understand what those flaws are and learn from them as well, because you're in a better position. As the saying goes, we stand on the shoulders of giants, right? So we're giants because we are able to stand on those shoulders, and we can learn from the past and be better. So great leaders understand that. And I like this sort of comparison here. I think it's pretty simple. So, you can read through them. I don't think I'll read through all of them, but it gets a good sense of what's the difference between a leader and a manager. And don't get me wrong, it may seem kind of negative, the stuff a manager does when you read through the list, but really what Warren Bennis is trying to say, if you can combine both of these qualities, you will be really, really on the pinnacle of being successful in business. But you have to remember too, not all leaders have to do a lot of administration. They may have others that they can delegate that work to. But many managers, that might be a big part of your responsibility. So you may not have that element and you may have to be good at it. So a manager administers, the leader innovates. Manager is a copy, the leader is an original. That's where you're challenging change and you have the courage to say things that's maybe not the status quo for sure, where some managers, they'll just go and roll with whatever the past policy is without challenging it. And then you don't get into that whole stuff that we talked about with Deming, how do you continuously improve if you're not challenging things? Manager asks how and when, the leader asks what and why. Manager has his or her eye always on the bottom line. The leader's eye is on the horizon, forward looking. But you do need to know what's going on. There's the short game and there's the long game. So we have to look at both. But a great leader looks at the long game. Manager is the classic good soldier. The leader is his or own person. They're not answering to others. They're not going down something that they feel is not right, morally or ethically, or all of those areas. Manager does things right. Now, this is a pretty clear statement. The manager does things right. The leader does the right thing. So put this in context. I think I mentioned Kodak and, well, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But when I was in construction and running a construction business when I was younger, we did millions of dollars worth of work for Kodak. And they basically went bankrupt. You know what? The managers there, they were doing things right. They were improving film processes. They were doing very, very good with the film process, but they weren't doing the right thing. The world was changing. It was going digital, right? So they were putting all their efforts in maybe continuously improving film when there's this disruptive technology, digital, which they actually invented the first digital camera, but they didn't take it anywhere. They didn't invest in it. They didn't want it to take off because they thought digital was making them so much money. So there's a classic example of doing things right but not doing the right thing. What good is it to make buggy whips, the best buggy whips in the world, when people are going to cars, right? Like, it's not going to help you in your business. So leaders, that's the visionary side. So if we're going to separate managers from leaders, there's a very good point to think about, and that can draw in a lot of things. Also, by the way, you don't have to be the CEO of the company to be a leader. You could be the janitor, but if you're really in that hospital cleaning those rooms to the nth degree to stop the spread of infection, engaging with people when they're upset about a loved one to make this whole process better for them, you're setting a standard for what a janitor does in that hospital, then you know what? You're a leader. So there's different levels of leader. It doesn't have to be with a title. So keep that in mind as well. So there's all of these skills that blend in, and none of us are perfect on all of them. And all of us can constantly, never-ending improvement, continuous improvement in these areas. It's a lifelong endeavor. I've mentioned Jim Collins in Good to Great. I think it is one of those business books that you can learn a lot from. And as I said, it was written in 1999. So there's a lot to learn historically because some of those great companies no longer exist. But one of the things I took away very much from that book, because it has a lot of different things that it gets into, but is the leadership. And he calls level 5 leadership. And a level 5 leadership builds enduring greatness. All right. So really, what he's talking about is a level 5 leader is not worried about when they leave the company because they've left it in really good hands. They built in the systems required for this company to go on and continue to be successful. So that's trying to build a level 5 leader. There's different levels and different people rise to certain levels. There's a lot that become an effective leader. But as I said, they may just stop there because they don't really get into the enduring greatness side. So level 4, it could be like an example he would call a Lee Iacocca maybe a level 4. And that may be before a lot of you, but Lee Iacocca was this very charismatic leader of Chrysler in the 1980s. And Chrysler went bankrupt, and he managed to get the US government to bail them out. And he was really, really innovative, creative, but it was also very much he was the front and stage person. Lee Iacocca is Chrysler kind of thing. And on Johnny Carson's show, late night shows, interviews everywhere. So there was nowhere you wouldn't see Lee Iacocca's name or picture or that sort of thing, to the point that it was kind of Chrysler became a little bit of a sideshow for the leadership of Lee Iacocca. So, but he was very good at what he did. So there's no doubt he was very good at what he did. But when he left, it they went kind of like that. Didn't go all the way down, but definitely couldn't sustain it. So you have some gifted leader, and that's great while they're there. But as soon as they leave, it's a bit of a problem. So what Jim Collins would call level 5 leader would make sure that the person that's going to replace you is been trained and is ready for that position and is able to step in, and that you have others in the wings that are also trained, that this will build a more enduring type company. And it's not, what he found about level 5 leaders too was they're humble. They're not this charismatic, flamboyant sort of person that everybody thinks is the great leader. He found that they were mostly humble, really, really disciplined and driven, and wanted the best for the company and the people work for the company instead of just them. Not that they didn't do really well. As a result, they did do really well, but it wasn't all about them. Many of these big companies that Collins referred to, people didn't even know who the leaders were, yet they were bigger than some of the other ones where you had this charismatic leader that everybody knows. That's how he would distinguish the various points. And you can kind of look at that and think, where am I on this ladder with what I do if I'm in at some sort of leadership position? And then you can start thinking, well, what are the things that would be required for me to get better? And what kind of training and skills do I need to build on and practice to move up? There is this research company, Aon Hewitt's Research, that's done a bunch of research. And I think this kind of wraps things up pretty good for some of the stuff that we looked at when we talked about employee performance appraisals and review processes and pay for performance and engagement and motivation. And so what they found in working with many, many companies and top employers around the world is they've found that a big part of what makes people effective and successful is ongoing regular performance conversations with your employees, with who you manage, career opportunity conversations. People feel that if they feel valued, they are engaged in their work. If they feel not valued, they are not engaged in their work. There's some statistical information that indicates that it's a very large number. Gallup polls have done a lot of research in this area, but it's a pretty large number, the amount of people that are not engaged in their work. Meaning that they're just going through the motions. There's engagement where you're excited about it and you're really kind of focused and you want to do a good work. And then there's those that are like, I'm starting at 9. Oh, it's 9:10. It's 9:15. When's this day going to end? That's not being engaged in your work. So I think I'd have to look it up again, but I think the number is around 40 or 50% or more. So it's a very large number. It's a very large number. So your goal needs to be to get more engagement of your people, hire the right people, as Collins would say, but also make sure that you get that engagement going. And big parts of that is paying attention to people. People want ongoing performance conversations in a productive way. They don't want to be schooled on what they're doing wrong. They want help and assistance at getting better. If I feel I'm being schooled on everything that I did wrong, that's not good. That's probably going to be a negative impact. What was funny though, some of the Gallup research found that people that are totally ignored by their boss are less engaged than those that are schooled on things. And of course, the highest level of engagement goes to people that get ongoing performance reviews, career opportunity conversations where they feel their boss sincerely wants to help them, mentor them to get better, right? So that means meaningful feedback and coaching conversations. We talked about deliberate practice when we talked about Anders Ericsson and his book Peak, but also his research that he's done. And you need to have deliberate practice. And a big component of deliberate practice is to get meaningful feedback and coaching from people that are more knowledgeable than you are at these specific areas. So all of that ties in, and that's what they've been finding through their research. So there's nothing here that should be a surprise to you after this course. That we've been this is just sort of highlighting things that they found. And when they say 50 best research, they looked at the 50 best companies. We talked about 100 best, 50 best rating systems for companies, Canada's 50 best employers, 100 best employers, and they got their data from those companies. And so the manager, the person you report to, provides the support you need to succeed, sets clear expectations and goals. That's why we talked about that at the beginning. Provides regular feedback that helps me to improve my performance, works with me to find ways I can develop and grow. Career development, managing performance. Effectively deals with poor performance on our team, takes care of free riding, takes action to support my health and well-being where appropriate. Think right now. We've just been through, and we are going through, a pandemic. I think how your manager has been treating you through this is going to have a huge impact on how you think about that manager and that company going forward. It can be good, it can be bad. So think about that, right? So that's what that's tied to. But it could tie to anything, right? It could tie to if you're in construction, safety, or manufacturing. Displays integrity and ethical conduct at all times. That's what we said about great leadership, right? And great management. If you're being unethical, then that has negative impacts that ripple through the business. Inspires me to do my best work every day. Gives you recognition. Some people have a lot of trouble giving compliments. They don't have trouble sort of saying something that's not, pointing out something that's not right, but they have trouble giving compliments. People appreciate compliments. But don't give compliments when they're not deserved, but recognize them when they are deserved. If you give feedback that says you're doing a wonderful job when you're not, that's not going to be good. All right? You want to make sure that when you give feedback, it's going to help the person to be better, and you want to give it in a very thoughtful and proactive way. And sometimes it means you point out some of I've always found sometimes when I was learning this was some of where I had a lot of difficulty, and these were the reasons why. And I've noticed you have some of those same things. And I've found in my own practice that if I did X, Y, Z, and this is how I did it, depends how you deliver the message, right? You have to look at people individually. You have to put yourself in their shoes, as we talked about with how to win friends and influence people. So all these little nodes that we've been touching on throughout the course, I'm really hoping that they're starting to formulate, and then you're starting to connect the dots and see how these different tools, techniques, mental models, relationship buildings, leadership qualities start to fundamentally grow together to make you a better manager who's able to better engage with your employees. And if you're not in a management position, to reverse that and understand where your manager is coming from, and to pick up on the positive traits and then understand the negative ones and how you would be a little bit different when you get into a management position, if that's your route, that what you decide to do. So inspires me to do my best work, takes the time to let me know my efforts are appreciated, understands my job well enough to evaluate my performance. So you get that by ongoing meetings. Not all managers know exactly what you do, but they take the time to better understand what you do so they can better understand how you're doing in that role and position. And really doesn't try to deflect or get away from questions. If they don't know something, they admit to it and they'll find it out and they'll come back to you. And they also take the time to celebrate successes. Some companies, they do a really great thing and it's sort of, there's no opportunity to celebrate. It should be celebrated and then you move on, right? So it's this continual process and you got to enjoy the journey. That's a big part of the difference between where you set a goal and looking at the processes and systems to repeat it. You got to learn to enjoy the journey to the goal, celebrate the goal, and then enjoy the journey to the next goal. Not just all the time wait for one goal, because sometimes it's anticlimactic, and then afterwards, like we talked about with extrinsic rewards, you've lost your motivation. So it's similar to that. And how you perceive yourself. So I think about the things that we've been talking about in this course, and it's sort of really getting people and hopefully yourselves to think, I think I mentioned there's this old saying about a stonemason building a hospital and asked, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just working, getting enough money so I can pay the rent, right? Asks another stonemason, what are you doing? Well, I'm doing this job, and this is a nice job. I do the stonework, and then my family's able to eat. Everybody's able to be happy in my family, and that makes me happy. And so this is what I do. So that's the second one. The third one, they asked the stonemason, well, I'm building this beautiful hospital, and this hospital is going to help the community. It's going to save lives. It's going to be a real sort of asset for everyone, including my family, including me. And I really, really take to heart what the end result that this brings to everyone. So the more people that you can get thinking like the third stonemason, the better the engagement, the better the business is going to be. If I've got a business filled with people thinking like the third stonemason, who do you think is going to be better over their career? Who's going to be doing the work to a higher standard? Who's going to be wanting to learn more how to provide something that is providing value to people? It's not going to be the first one, that's for sure. First one's kind of just wants a paycheck. Second one will be a bit better for sure, because they want the job security on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But if we're thinking about self-actualization, the third one is getting up there and bringing that, and it's going to spread, and that's going to have a positive influence on everybody that they work with. So in closing this, I would definitely think about leadership. I would read up on this topic, all these topics that we've been talking about, and this endeavor of human resource management and accelerating. This is a lifelong process. This isn't a one semester course. This is a lifelong process that if you really look at trying to improve in this and take Deming's word on the aspect of continuous improvement, day by day, month by month, year by year, in a number of years, you will be doing really, really well for yourself. So I hope you're enjoying the course, and we'll meet in class live, and have a wonderful day. Tom Stevenson signing off. Bye for now.